In this video, we're going to talk about common nouns and proper nouns. Well, we can do that, but we also have to consider other things, like the types of inflections words can take, like can they take a possessive S, can they take a plural S, and where do they show up in a sentence? So let's start with the meaning of nouns. And nouns tend to reference people, places, things, and abstract ideas. So you might have people that are in a profession, like say a doctor, that would be a noun, or you might know someone specific, like maybe you have a friend named Tom, so Tom could be a noun. There are places, for instance, you could have a noun like store, you go to the store, something like park, or it might be a specific place as well, like the Eiffel Tower, for instance. We can also have things as nouns. So these would be your typical objects that you expect in the world, like, for instance, a ball, or maybe something like an exam, maybe even just a piece of paper. You could also have a product, something like Google. So these are the typical nouns that you would expect. But we also have these abstract ideas, and these are things that are either ideas, concepts, or qualities. So one thing could be something like happiness. Now, this is a noun, even though it describes a quality. Happiness is not something that you can see. It's not something you can touch. It's not something that you can feel with your hands. It's not something that you can smell. It's a concept. It describes something. It describes, say, the thing that a happy person would feel deep down inside. You could also have other abstract things that refer to periods of time, such as, say, childhood. So this is a period of time. We could also have, say, school subjects, like science, mathematics, linguistics, physics. These are all abstract ideas. They are concepts. So one common property of nouns is that they usually have singular and plural forms. So this is differentiating between one thing and multiple things. For instance, the word dog. You can have one dog, or you can have two dogs. This is an example of a countable noun. Same thing with exam, so we can have one exam or two exams. In fact, even proper names. People like Tom can be plural. I know one Tom, or I actually know two Toms in my life. It's a little weird. Usually we reference it to how many of those specific people we know, instead of saying something like, oh, I own three Toms. That's a little weird. But even proper names can have singular and plural forms. In fact, most of the nouns in English do have plural forms. Some of them have irregular plural forms. For instance, child. If we have more than one child, we don't say childs, we would say children. So this is actually a unique word in English, because this ren suffix comes from German, and it is the only ren that means plural that we have in English. So these are all examples of countable nouns. Now, not all nouns are countable, and we call those nouns that are not countable uncountable nouns. English textbooks like to refer to them as mass nouns, but I like the term uncountable because it describes exactly what it is. So something would be uncountable if you cannot have a distinct singular and plural form. Something like the word garbage. Okay? We can say garbage, I have some garbage, but we cannot say I have garbages. So we put a little star before the word to say that it is ungrammatical. So we cannot say the word garbages. If we're talking about air in the atmosphere, then it is uncountable. We cannot say airs to mean more than one air in the atmosphere. We can say airs to mean the aura or the feeling that a person has, but that is a different word, air. Another one would be something like oxygen. Now, if you're talking atomically, you can say, oh yeah, we have two oxygens, but typically we don't say, I'm going to breathe 5 oxygens right now. We would say, yes, I breathe in oxygen. So these are uncountable nouns. Now, how do you tell when you have an uncountable noun? Well, there's a little trick here. Uncountable nouns can take the word much before them. I don't have much garbage. I'm not breathing much air. I'm not getting much oxygen. What we cannot do is we cannot use the word many. So we cannot say, I have many garbage. I have many air. These are all ungrammatical. Now, if you have a countable noun, then you can do it. So, for instance, you can say many dogs, but you cannot say, for example, much dogs. I don't have much dogs. You have to say, I don't have many dogs. So you can use the many or much test to figure out if your noun is countable or uncountable. So those are the different forms the nouns can take. Now, how do we determine what they are from a positional standpoint? Well, we can identify nouns if they appear after determiners or after quantifiers. Now, determiners and quantifiers aren't words that you might have seen before, but I have some examples of each. So determiners include things like the article the demonstrative though, or any of our possessive pronouns like his or her. So if we can put a word after any of these in this noun position, we're going to have a noun. Like you could say, for instance, the dog, or you could say something like those climbers. So a climber is a noun. You could say his or her happiness, like we had before. So this is how we can tell we have a noun. Quantifiers are the same thing. So quantifiers tell you how many of something you have. It's a quantity. You could say, I have some cabbage. Okay, maybe you like cabbage for dinner. If I'm talking about a group of people, I could say every person. And that tells us person is a noun. And just like before with the many test, we could use many with any countable noun. So we could say something like many tables. Okay, so we can use any of these determiners or quantifiers, place them before a noun to see if they work. Now, of course, this isn't going to work with proper nouns, but it'll work with our countable and uncountable common nouns that we've just seen. We can also see nouns at the beginning of a sentence as the subject. So these are what are called sentence frames, and if you put one word into these positions, you should have a noun, like apples. An apple is delicious. Is good for proper names, for places, as well as for these abstract ideas. So you could say something like, envy is my favorite emotion, or something like hatred is my favorite emotion. But we could also say things like, linguistics is my favorite subject. So we could put subject in this list too. So these are all the different ways we can identify nouns. Now, proper nouns, just to show you explicitly, these are what are called named individuals or named places, and I have them highlighted here. So, for example, Terry is my best friend. Well, Terry is the name of a person, it is a proper noun. I saw Big Ben in London. So Big Ben is, of course, that tower with the clock on it in London. Or have you been to Disneyland? Disneyland is another example of a proper noun. What you find with proper nouns is that they are always capitalized. So that's a really good way to tell if you have a proper noun or not. In English, capitalized anywhere in the sentence, as long as they are a proper noun. So let's do some practice. You can pause the video if you want. I want you to find where the nouns are, and I don't have any proper nouns here, so we're just going to find all the common nouns. Okay, let me read this out to you first. The squirrel grabbed a nut and climbed up a tree. Many observers took photos of his climb. So let's find the nouns here. Well, first of all, we have squirrel. Squirrel is a noun. It refers to the creature that grabs acorns and climbs up trees. So this is a person, and we can tell because we have the word the right before it. If we see the word the, we know we have to have a noun in order to complete that phrase that the is part of. Second, we have nut. So grabbed a nut. This, of course, is a physical thing. This is something the squirrel eats. Another indication is that we have the determiner before it. The, and an are articles, which are a subclass of determiners. Climbed up a tree. So tree is also a noun. I can actually draw this one, sort of. I'm sorry that looks like broccoli, but it is a tree. Once again, we have before indicating that we have a noun following it. Observers is another noun here, and we can tell because of the word many. So many observers. Observers are people who are watching an event. So many observers took photos. Okay, photos. So we don't have a determiner or a quantifier before it, But we know that photos just means pictures. They are physical things that you can see. So photos is a noun. And there's one more, and this might be a little bit tricky. But photos of his climb. But climb is another noun here, and you can tell because of the word his before it. This is a possessive pronoun, and possessive pronouns have to occur before nouns. Now you might be thinking, hold on, isn't this a verb? Well, it can be if I say he climbs trees or he climbed a tree, but in this case, it is a noun. It is talking about the thing that he did, his event, his journey, his climb. And this works very similar to, say, the word drink. You could say, I drank something as a verb, or you could use it as a noun if you say, I have a drink. Well, same thing. He climbed a tree, or he took a climb, or he did a climb. The English is a little weird there, but you can understand what I mean. It makes sense. It might not sound perfectly grammatical, but it makes sense. Okay, so that's it on common nouns and proper nouns. If you have any questions, leave them below, and I will answer them the best that I can. A concrete noun is a noun that you can experience with one of your five senses, such as taste, smell, hearing, touch, or sight. I know there's more than five senses, but we'll use these for simplicity. An abstract noun is an idea, a concept, or an emotion. It's something that you cannot experience through your five senses. Now we'll show some examples of each. Let's start with concrete nouns, things that you can see, touch, hear, smell, or taste. Let's start with things you can see. Now, this is most of the physical objects in the world. Actually, it's all of the physical objects because you can see them all. This might be something outside, like a flower, or maybe a lawn or a garden. It might be a physical object, like a fence. I'm really thinking of household yards here, but let's step away and go to, say, a mall or something. Well, you can actually see a mall. You can see a store. You can see a chair. Okay, there's lots of things that we can see. Similarly, things you can touch. This is very similar. So, of course, you can touch a can if you want. Say you have a can of Coke, a can of Pepsi. There's so many things you can touch. You can touch an arm. You can touch a leg. You can touch a hand. Okay, things you can hear. So you can hear someone's voice. This is a nice concrete noun. This is something that can be heard. You could hear, say, for instance, a siren. So this is the noise that an ambulance would make. You could hear well, you have a voice. You could hear a siren. You could hear, say, a C or something. So this would be a musical note that you could hear. So a C or something like maybe a D flat. I think that's how you write that, a D flat. Okay, so these are all notes that you could hear. Things that you could smell. Well, here's a good example. You could smell, say, perfume. So perfume is something concrete that you can smell, or maybe something, I don't know, a little bit more disgusting. You could smell a fart. That is another example of a concrete noun. So you might be thinking, hold on a second. A concrete noun, how is a fart concrete? Well, remember, these are particles. This is gas that goes into the air. So gas itself is concrete. Okay, I don't mean just gas as being a fart. This could be the gas that goes inside of your car, too. Things you can taste. Of course, any sort of food that you could taste. Okay, anything like sugar, anything like salt, all of these different things that you can taste. Listen, you know what concrete nouns are. There are thousands and thousands of examples. Abstract nouns, though, they're a little bit harder. These are the ones that we don't think of too often. So I have two different definitions here for abstract nouns that I think are really helpful. One is something that can be felt emotionally. Things like happiness or sadness. So a lot of the words, for instance, that are like sad or happy or a lot of other adjectives, abstract nouns are formed by taking that adjective and adding the suffix N-E-S-S or ness to it. So happiness, sadness. Of course, not every single adjective works like this. Likability is another one. So, for instance, he is a person with high likability. Okay? You can experience, of course, negative emotions such as things like depression, something like envy, something like fear. These are all examples of abstract nouns. Now, there's this other side to abstract nouns, which are things that you can know or you can understand, so your concepts or ideas. Things I mentioned before, such as adolescence. So, of course, this is the teen years of your life. Childhood would be the young years of your life. This could be concepts such as math, or linguistics, or physics, or chemistry. So these are all different types of abstract nouns. Not all of these you can put the word the or before like you can with the concrete nouns, but you can usually put his or her before this. So I know that his adolescence wasn't that great. His math doesn't make much sense to me. His linguistics is a little weird. His idea of terrorism isn't very good. His idea of democracy is kind of lacking. So his idea of is a really good test as well. His idea of blank. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these nouns and ask ourselves, are they abstract or are they concrete? So let me read these sentences out loud. I have known my doctor forever. His job is tough, so I have much admiration and respect for him. Okay, well, doctor. Doctor is a person. It's someone you can see, it's someone you can talk to. This is, of course, a concrete noun. Job. Okay, well, this is interesting. Job is a collection of tasks. It's something that you go to every day. It's not something you can physically see. You can see someone working at a job, but you can't actually see a job itself. So this is an abstract noun. A job is not something you can experience with one of those independent senses. This is something that you do on a daily basis. Okay, admiration. This is another abstract noun. You cannot see admiration. You can see someone displaying admiration, but you cannot actually see the concept of admiration. Similarly with the word respect. Respect is another case of an abstract noun. You cannot physically see respect, but you can see someone displaying respect. So that's the difference between concrete and abstract nouns. If you have any questions, please leave them below and I will do my best to answer them.